The ballroom glittered like a cage of gold, chandeliers casting diamonds of light over the city's elite. I hated these events. The hollow laughter, the way people's eyes flicked to my family's name etched on museum wings and hospital pavilions. But my father insisted. You'll inherit this empire someday, Clara. You need to learn how to navigate it. And then he appeared. Daniel Carter. Tall, with a smile that didn't feel rehearsed, he cut through the crowd like he wasn't even trying to impress anyone. When he shook my hand, his grip was warm, his thumb brushing my knuckles in a way that made my breath hitch. You're the only person here who looks as miserable as I feel, he murmured, leaning in so only I could hear. I laughed, genuinely, for the first time in months. Our courtship was a whirlwind. He brought me coffee after my late-night charity meetings, remembered my favorite obscure indie band, and kissed me in the rain outside the opera house like we were in some black-and-white film. When he proposed 8 months later with a vintage ring, it reminded me of you, unique, timeless. I didn't hesitate. But then the crack started. First it was his phone. He'd leave it face down, flinch when notifications buzzed. Then came the business trips. Weekends away where his location sharing mysteriously failed. I told myself I was paranoid. Until the night I woke to his whispered phone call. I told you, Lena. Just a few more months. The name Lena slithered into my chest like a knife. I hired an investigator. The photos arrived in a sealed envelope. Daniel and Lena tangled in cafe booths, her fingers curled possessively around his wrist. But the real gut punch was the bank statement mixed in. A joint account I'd never known about, funded with my money. Transfers labeled investment returns. The same lie he'd told me when I'd questioned missing funds. That's when I realized. The ring, the rain-soaked kisses, the way he'd charmed my father. All of it was a script. And I'd been the perfect mark. But Daniel had made one fatal mistake. He assumed the money was all he had to take from me. He forgot what happens when a woman with nothing left to lose learns how to play his game. The morning after I found the messages, I woke up with a clarity so sharp it felt like ice in my veins. Daniel was still asleep beside me, his arm draped possessively over my waist like he hadn't spent the night whispering promises to another woman. I carefully slid out from under his grip, my bare feet silent against the marble floors of our penthouse. The sunrise bled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting everything in hues of gold and crimson. I used to love this time of day, the quiet before the world woke up. Now it just felt like the calm before a storm. My storm. I made coffee, the rich aroma filling the kitchen, and pulled up my laptop. My hands didn't shake. My breath didn't hitch. There was no room for tears now. Only strategy. First, I needed to know everything. The investigator. Victor Langley's office was tucked away in an unassuming building downtown, the kind of place people walked past without a second glance. Perfect for a man who made his living uncovering secrets. He didn't flinch when I slid the envelope of cash across his desk. I need to know exactly who Lena is, I said. And I need proof of every lie Daniel has ever told me. Victor's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. Give me 3 days. He only needed 2. The other woman. Lena Moretti. 28. A freelance graphic designer with a taste for luxury she couldn't afford, unless someone else was footing the bill. Victor's dossier was thorough. Photos of her and Daniel at intimate dinners, weekend getaways to Napa Valley, even a shared safety deposit box under a fake name. But the most damning piece? A bank statement showing regular transfers from my accounts into a joint savings under their aliases. Investment returns, my ass. Daniel hadn't just been stealing from me. He'd been building a future with her, using my money. The first move. I could have confronted him. Screamed. Thrown him out. But where was the fun in that? Well, if Daniel wanted to play thief, I'd let him. And then I'd make sure he choked on every stolen penny. I started small. The phantom withdrawals. Daniel had access to my accounts, a privilege I'd foolishly granted when we got engaged. Now I used it against him. Late at night, I'd log in and siphon off small amounts, just enough to go unnoticed. 1,000 here. 500 there. I funneled it into an offshore account under a shell corporation Victor helped me set up. Then I waited. It took 2 weeks for Daniel to notice. Clara, did you move money from the joint account? He asked one evening, his voice carefully casual as he poured himself a whiskey. I blinked up at him from my book. No. Maybe it's a bank error. Want me to call them? He waved a hand, forcing a laugh. No. It's nothing. But his knuckles were white around the glass. The bait. Next I dangled a carrot. I accidentally left my laptop open. A fake email from my father's accountant on the screen. Clara, the trust fund is being adjusted. Once the prenup is signed, you'll have full access to the remaining $12 million. I watched from the hallway mirror as Daniel's eyes scanned the screen, his breath catching. That night he texted Lena. We're close. Just hold on a little longer. The divide. Now it was time to turn them against each other. I created a fake Instagram profile. Elena Underhus, a supposed mutual friend of Lena's. A few likes on her photos, a comment here and there, and soon we were dmang. You and Daniel are so cute together. I typed, then waited. Lena responded within minutes. Thanks. He's my everything. I smirked. That's so sweet. I always thought he'd end up with Clara though. He talks about her a lot at work. A long pause. Then, what do you mean? Oh, maybe I shouldn't have said anything. Forget it. But the seed was planted. The breaking point. 3 days later, Victor sent me a video. A cafe. Lena slapping Daniel across the face, her voice shaking with fury. You're still sleeping with her, aren't you? Daniel grabbed her wrist, hissing something too low to hear. Then crack, his palm struck her cheek. The other patrons gasped. Someone's phone was already recording. I smiled. Perfect. The morning after the cafe incident, Daniel came home with a fresh scratch down his neck and the kind of tension in his shoulders that told me he and Lena had only just stopped fighting. He didn't mention it, of course. Instead, he kissed my forehead like nothing was wrong and muttered something about a long day at work. I smiled up at him, all soft edges and doe eyes, and handed him a velvet box. I saw this and thought of you. Inside was a Patek Philippe watch, elegant, understated, and worth more than most people made in a year. His fingers trembled slightly as he lifted it, the weight of it heavy in his palm. Clara, this is too much, he said, but his voice was thick with greed. I fastened it around his wrist myself, letting my fingers linger. Nothing's too much for the man I love. What he didn't know. The watch wasn't just a gift. It was a wire. Victor had sourced the device from a contact in private security. Undetectable to scanners, with a 48-hour battery life and a microphone so sensitive it could pick up a whisper across a room. By noon, I was listening to Daniel's every word. Most of it was mundane. Office small talk, a tense call with his broker. But then at 3:17 p.m. his phone buzzed. Lena. What the hell was that yesterday? Her voice was raw, like she'd been crying. You hit me in public, Daniel. Pause. Then Daniel, low and venomous. You were making a scene. We can't afford that right now. I don't care. I'm done waiting. You promised me this would be over by now. A chair scraped. Daniel's voice dropped to a hiss. Keep your voice down. Clara's trust fund unlocks in 2 months. We stick to the plan. No, Lena's breath hitched. I'm pregnant. Silence. Then, you're sure? Daniel's voice was ice. 8 weeks. A beat. You're not happy. Another pause, longer this time. When Daniel finally spoke, it wasn't to reassure her. This changes nothing. Get rid of it. My stomach twisted. I'd known Daniel was a liar. Leaf. But this was something darker. I needed him unraveled. Desperate. And I knew exactly how to do it. That evening, I accidentally left my father's private number on the kitchen counter, circled in red on a fake memo about auditing the family's offshore accounts. Daniel pocketed it within seconds. The next morning, he called in sick to work, but not before I'd swapped his laptop charger with a lookalike rigged to fry his hard drive. By noon, his company's IT department was frantically trying to recover corrupted files. By 3 p.m., an anonymous email hit the CEO's inbox. Ask Daniel about the missing client funds. And by 5 p.m., Daniel was suspended pending investigation. Lena showed up at our penthouse that night. Daniel wasn't home yet, too busy panicking at a bar, no doubt. So when the doorman called up to announce her, I almost laughed. Send her up. She looked younger in person. Paler. The angry red mark from Daniel's slap still visible under her foundation. You must be Lena, I said sweetly, pouring her a tea I knew she wouldn't drink. Daniel's told me so much about you. Her fingers clenched around her purse. I doubt that. I tilted my head. Oh. She met my eyes then and I saw it, the flicker of guilt, the fear. Good. He's using you, she blurted. Both of us. I let my smile fade just enough to seem vulnerable. What do you mean? And then like I knew she would, Lena spilled everything. Their 3-year relationship. The plan to milk me dry. The way Daniel had promised her half of my fortune once the prenup was signed. I thought you should know, she finished weakly. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Thank you. Then I slid an envelope toward her. Inside, a photo of Daniel leaving a motel with another woman. Not Lena. Not me. Her face went sheet white. He'll never change, I whispered. But we can make sure he pays. 2 days later, Daniel's boss formally accused him of embezzlement. Lena transferred every penny from their joint account to an untraceable offshore vault. And the watch on Daniel's wrist recorded him sobbing to his brother. I'm screwed. If Clara finds out, I lose everything. Daniel, you have no idea. The first crack in Daniel's perfect facade appeared at 2:37 a.m. on a Tuesday. I awoke to the sound of his phone clattering to the bathroom floor, followed by a string of muffled curses. Through half-lidded eyes, I watched his silhouette pace the marble tiles, the glow from his screen casting hollow shadows across his unshaven face. You have to give me more time, he hissed into the phone, one hand gripping the edge of the sink like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Lena's cleaned out everything. Do you have any idea what position that puts me in? Pause. Then quieter. No, she can't know. Not yet. I rolled over, letting my breathing stay slow and even as the shower turned on to mask his panic. The water ran for 37 minutes. When he finally crawled back into bed, his skin smelled like hotel soap and bourbon. Lena had vanished like smoke. Her apartment, empty, lease terminated. Her phone, disconnected. The offshore account, drained to the last cent. Daniel's hands shook at breakfast that morning as he scrolled through his dwindling bank balance. I watched over the rim of my coffee cup as he opened his mouth, no doubt to ask me for money, then closed it again. Too proud. Too guilty. Too late. Everything all right? I asked, tilting my head. He forced a smile. Just work stress. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. His wedding band felt cold under my fingers. Maybe you should take a few days off, I murmured. We could go somewhere. Just us. His eyes flickered with something like hope. Like hunger. Perfect. Victor's cabin in the Adirondacks was the perfect stage. Remote, rustic, and utterly disconnected from the outside world. No cell service. No witnesses. Just the two of us. And the lie I'd prepared. I have to tell you something, I whispered on the second night as firelight danced across Daniel's increasingly hollow cheeks. He stilled, the whiskey in his glass catching the light like liquid amber. Pie father. I let my voice break. He's cutting me off. All of it. The trust, the shares, everything. Daniel's glass hit the coffee table with a thud. What? Why? I wiped at imaginary tears. He thinks I'm too reckless. That you're a bad influence. For a heartbeat, just one, his mask slipped. I saw it all, the calculation. The disappointment. The moment he realized the golden goose had stopped laying eggs. Then he was pulling me into his arms, murmuring sweet nothings into my hair. We'll be okay. We don't need his money. Liar. I buried my face in his shoulder so he wouldn't see me smile. The real show started when we got back to the city. First, the eviction notice. A fake but convincing enough with Victor's connections. Then the emails from my father's lawyers, demanding repayment of loans I'd never taken out. Daniel's patience lasted exactly 48 hours. I came home to find our safe open, my jewelry box ransacked. He didn't even bother hiding it. Where were you? He demanded instead, blocking the doorway to our bedroom. Out. I made my voice small. Looking for jobs. His laugh was bitter. With what resume? You've never worked a day in your life. The words hung between us, ugly and true. I let him see me flinch. It happened in the kitchen. I'd accidentally broken one of his precious whiskey glasses. The set Lena had given him, though of course he'd never told me that. You stupid bitch, he snarled, grabbing my wrist hard enough to bruise. Do you have any idea what that cost? I didn't struggle. Didn't fight back. Just stared at the man I'd almost married and whispered, You're hurting me. Something in his eyes shifted. Darkened. The, the sound of a camera shutter. We both turned to see Victor standing in the doorway, lens pointed straight at us. Daniel's grip went slack. What the hell? Smile, I said, stepping back as Victor tossed me the camera. You're on candid camera. That night, Daniel packed a single suitcase and left without a word. I waited exactly 20 minutes before picking up the phone. Victor, it's time. On the other end of the line, I could hear the smirk in his voice. The video's already rendering. Where do you want it sent first? I traced a finger over the fresh bruises on my wrist. Everywhere. The video went viral at 9:17 a.m. on a Thursday morning. By noon, Daniel Carter was trending in 3 countries. I watched from my father's private jet, leased under a shell company of course, as the internet tore Daniel apart frame by frame. The way his fingers dug into my wrist. The spittle flying from his lips as he called me that word. The moment his other hand twitched like he wanted to strike me. Twitter erupted. Scum like this belongs in prison. She should press charges. Someone find this bastard's workplace. They did. Daniel's office had been preparing to fire him for weeks. The video gave them the perfect excuse. His former boss called me personally, voice dripping with false sympathy. Ms. Whitmore, we had no idea what kind of man he was. Rest assured his access has been revoked. I made sure to sound tearful. Grateful. Then I hung up and opened the encrypted file Victor had sent. Security footage from Daniel's now former workplace showed him screaming at HR, throwing his keycard at the CEO's head, and finally being escorted out by security. The timestamp read 10:42 a.m. At 10:43 his phone pinged with an alert from his bank. Account frozen pending investigation. I sipped my champagne and watched his world burn. Lena reappeared on a Friday, standing in the rain outside Daniel's new apartment, a cockroach-infested studio in a neighborhood even Uber drivers avoided. Victor's surveillance feed showed it all in grainy black and white. Her knocking. Him answering, face slack with shock. Her pulling a sonogram from her coat pocket. Daniel stumbled back like she'd struck him. You kept it. His voice cracked on the recording. Lena's smile was all teeth. Surprise. Then she dropped the real bomb. I want child support. $50,000 a month. Or I take this video. She held up her phone, my slap footage glowing on the screen. To the police. And the press. Daniel's knees actually buckled. I rewound that part 3 times. He called me that night. Not from his number, he'd been blocked, but from a payphone near his building. I knew because Victor had a man watching him 24/7. Clara. His voice was raw, ruined. Please. I need to explain. I let the silence stretch just long enough to hear his breathing quicken. There's nothing to explain, Daniel. I kept my voice soft. Broken. The perfect victim. I saw the video. A choked noise. That wasn't, I would never. Lena came to see me. Dead silence. She told me everything, I whispered. About the baby. About your plan. Another pause. Did you ever love me? Even a little? His answer came too fast. Of course I did. I hung up. Victor's team captured the moment Daniel punched through the payphone glass. The blood looked almost black in the streetlight. The trap had 2 final springs. First, a tip to the IRS about Daniel's offshore accounts, the ones he'd used to hide stolen money from me. Second, a carefully leaked rumor to his remaining friends that he'd been the one to leak the slap video, for sympathy. By Sunday night, his bank accounts had been seized. His few remaining friends had disowned him. And Lena? She'd vanished again, leaving only a note. You'll hear from my lawyer. I found him in a dive bar near the docks, 3 sheets to the wind and smelling like regret. He didn't recognize me at first. Not with the dark wig and oversized sunglasses. Not until I slid into the seat opposite him and said his name. Daniel's head snapped up. His bloodshot eyes widened. Clara. I pushed a manila envelope across the sticky table. Inside. A photo of Lena boarding a private plane to Belize. A positive pregnancy test, fake. And a note in her handwriting. Thanks for the money, idiot. Daniel made a sound like a wounded animal. Here's what's going to happen, I said softly, leaning in. You're going to leave the city. You're going to tell everyone you had a breakdown. And if you ever contact me again. I tapped the second envelope in my purse. the one with his embezzlement proof. Federal prison gets the rest. The first sign that Daniel wasn't going quietly came exactly 11 days after our bar meeting. I was reviewing security footage from my new penthouse, a sleek, unlisted property purchased through layers of shell companies, when Victor's alert popped up. He's moving. The video feed showed Daniel slipping into an underground parking garage, his hood pulled low over his face. He approached a black sedan with tinted windows, its license plate deliberately obscured. The driver's window rolled down just enough to reveal a familiar face. Mark Renshaw, my father's disgraced former CFO. My blood ran cold. Mark had been fired 2 years ago for embezzlement. He also happened to be the only person outside the family who knew the full extent of my trust fund's vulnerabilities. Daniel wasn't just lashing out. He was hunting. Victor intercepted the meeting's audio through a directional microphone aimed at the car's windshield. "You're sure this will work?" Daniel's voice was barely recognizable, raspy with sleepless nights and something darker. Mark chuckled. "Oh, it'll work. But it's gonna cost you." Pause. Then the sound of a briefcase clicking open. "Half now," Daniel said. "Half when Clara's accounts are drained." I froze. Daniel didn't have that kind of money. Not unless. A quick check of Lena's offshore account confirmed it. He'd somehow clawed back $200,000. Probably by selling everything he owned. This wasn't desperation. This was war. I could have shut it down then. Frozen my accounts. Had Victor intercept them. But where was the fun in that? Instead, I let Mark hack into a decoy account. A honeypot filled with just enough money to be tempting, but not enough to solve Daniel's problems. $1.2 million. Enough to make him think he'd won. Daniel transferred the money immediately, routing it through 3 shell companies before finally landing in a Cayman Islands account. He didn't notice the tiny clause buried in the transfer agreement, a stipulation that any funds over $1 million automatically triggered an IRS audit, or that the account number he'd sent it to matched one owned by Lena. I waited until he was mid-transfer to call him. "Enjoying your victory, Daniel?" Silence. Then, "How the hell are you seeing this?" I could practically hear his pulse rabbiting through the phone. "Look at the recipient name again." A beat. Then a strangled curse. The account wasn't just under Lena's name, it was under our names. Lena Carter. His wife. Because while Daniel had been scheming, Lena had been busy, filing marriage paperwork from a remote corner of Nevada where proxies could stand in for the groom. And under state law, that made the money marital property. Lena was waiting for him when he stormed into the courthouse to contest the marriage. She looked different, sharper. Her once timid posture now straight-backed with quiet confidence. The baby bump barely visible under her tailored coat. "You shouldn't have tried to cut me out, Daniel." Her voice carried perfectly through Victor's hidden mic. Daniel lunged, only to be restrained by bailiffs. "That's my money." Lena smiled. "Correction. It's our money. And thanks to you transferring it directly to your wife. Well." She patted her stomach. "Junior's college fund is set." What happened next was almost too easy. 3:15 p.m. Daniel was arrested for attempted assault. 4:30 p.m. The IRS froze his assets pending investigation. 7 p.m. My father's lawyers filed a civil suit for embezzlement. But the real masterpiece? The look on Daniel's face when the cops read him his rights, and the arresting officer slipped him a note from me. "P.S. Say hi to Mark for me." Because while Daniel had been distracted, Victor had handed the FBI proof of Mark's insider trading. 2 birds. 1 stone. The first nightmare came the night Daniel was sentenced. I woke at 3:17 a.m., sheets tangled around my legs, my throat raw like I'd been screaming. The penthouse was too quiet. No city sounds reached this high up. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the ghost of Daniel's voice in my head. "You'll regret this." I poured myself a whiskey, his favorite, out of spite and pulled up the security feeds. Victor had tapped into the prison cameras. There was Daniel, curled on a thin cot in a 6x9 cell, his orange jumpsuit hanging loose on a frame that had lost 20 pounds. His eyes were open. Staring. Planning. I took a slow sip. The burn down my throat didn't help. The letter arrived 3 days later, slipped between the pages of my morning newspaper. "Claire, you think you've won? You've only made me dangerous. Check your father's offshore accounts. Then ask yourself, How did I get those numbers? P.S. Say hello to Lena for me. The paper crumpled in my fist. Victor confirmed it within the hour. Someone had accessed the Whitmore family's Bermuda holdings. Not enough to drain them, but enough to prove they'd been breached. And the access point? A IP address traced to Lena's laptop. I found her at a prenatal yoga class in Brooklyn, her baby bump just starting to show under loose linen. She took one look at my face and sighed. Let's talk outside. The cafe around the corner smelled of cinnamon and burnt espresso. Lena stirred honey into her tea with steady hands. It wasn't me, she said before I could speak. I know. Her spoon stilled. Then why? Because Daniel wants us at each other's throats. I slid the letter across the table. And he's using your past to do it. Lena's face paled as she read. When she looked up, her eyes were different, sharper. He's referencing Montenegro. A place neither of us had mentioned before. A place Victor's dossier had no record of. Back in the car, Victor pulled up a new file. Lena Dubrovnik, he murmured. Born in Belgrade. Changed her name after a 2016 scandal involving a Russian oligarch's missing millions. The photo showed a younger Lena boarding a private jet, a briefcase handcuffed to her wrist. She wasn't just a gold digger, I realized. She was a thief. Victor nodded. And Daniel didn't just randomly target her. They met in prison, white-collar facility in Switzerland. He was inside for fraud. He was visiting his old boss. My stomach dropped. His boss. The screen changed to a familiar face, Mark Renshaw, smiling beside a younger Daniel at a company retreat. My father's former CFO. The pieces clicked together with terrible clarity. This was never about love. It was a long con. Rikers Island smelled of bleach and hopelessness. Daniel looked up when I entered the visitation room, his orange jumpsuit hanging loose, his eyes bright with triumph. Took you long enough. I sat slowly, my Prada coat pooling around me like armor. You never loved either of us, did you? He smirked. Love is for suckers. Then why the baby? His smile faded. Lena's voice came from behind me. Because pregnant women can't be extradited to certain countries. She stepped into view, her hand resting on her stomach. Isn't that right, honey? Daniel's chair screeched as he stood. You bitch. Guards swarmed him. Lena didn't flinch. Outside, in the prison's shadowed parking lot, Lena told me everything. The Montenegro job. The $20 million she'd stolen from a Russian arms dealer. The way Daniel had recognized her from Interpol alerts and seen an opportunity. He was supposed to help me launder it, she murmured, lighting a cigarette. Then he stole the account numbers and blackmailed me into this ridiculous scheme. The baby kicked. She rubbed her stomach absently. I was going to disappear after the birth. But then you. She exhaled smoke, almost smiling. You were better than him. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain and diesel. What now? I asked. Lena stubbed out her cigarette. Now I give you what Daniel really stole from your family. A USB drive glinted in her palm. Every dirty secret Mark Renshaw ever hid. Including the one that got him fired. I took it. Why? Her smile was all teeth. Because revenge tastes better shared. The USB drive burned a hole in my pocket all the way back to Manhattan. Victor's secure loft smelled of stale coffee and adrenaline as we plugged it in. The files unfurled across 3 monitors, bank records, shell company trails, and one damning video from my father's private office. Mark Renshaw's voice hissed through the speakers. The Russians will pull funding unless we deliver the prototype, Jonathan. We're talking billions here. My father's face filled the screen, his expression colder than I'd ever seen. Then tell Volkov he'll get his damn missiles. But if one serial number traces back to Whitmore Aerospace. Victor hit pause. The timestamp read 6 weeks before Mark's embezzlement scandal. I tasted bile. My father hadn't fired Mark for stealing. He'd paid him to disappear. The Whitmore penthouse smelled of lemon polish and lies. My father stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, his back to me, watching rain sheet over the city. You knew I'd find out eventually, I said. His reflection's mouth tightened. I'd hoped you wouldn't. The USB drive clattered onto his desk. He didn't turn. Volkov's weapons killed children in Syria last year. My voice shook. We profited from that? Finally he moved, Not toward me but to the locked cabinet where he kept his scotch. Poured 2 fingers. Drank it neat. Your trust fund. He wiped his mouth. The one Daniel coveted? Built entirely on blood money. A hollow laugh. Poetic, isn't it? The grandfather clock ticked between us. I'd come here for answers. Now I wished I'd stayed ignorant. Daniel's new cell block reeked of sweat and industrial cleaner. He looked up from his metal cot, eyes bloodshot but alert. When he saw me, his cracked lips peeled back in a grin. Figured it out, huh? I let the silence stretch, watching his smirk fade. You knew, I finally said. That's why you targeted me. Not just for the money, for leverage against my father. His shrug was all the confirmation I needed. Victor's surveillance had uncovered the rest. Daniel's chance meeting with Lena in Switzerland? Orchestrated by Volkov's men. The entire romance? A play for the USB files Mark had stolen. Me. Just collateral damage. The warden's office was cramped and overheated. Volkov's lawyer sat across from me, his Italian loafers gleaming under fluorescent lights. My client is prepared to be merciful, he purred, sliding a contract across the desk. Sign over the missile schematics your father stole and the Whitmore family walks away. I traced the embossed letterhead. And if I refuse? The lawyer's smile didn't reach his eyes. Then the next prison shank has Daniel Carter's name on it. He leaned closer. And the one after that might find its way to you. Midnight found me on the penthouse terrace, the USB drive balanced on the railing. One flick of my wrist and it would plunge 50 stories into the Hudson. No more weapons. No more blackmail. No more revenge. But behind me, my father's voice cut through the dark. Whatever you choose. His cane tapped closer. No, this wasn't your fault. I closed my fingers around the drive. Some legacies couldn't be escaped. The USB drive felt like a live grenade in my palm as I boarded the private jet to Geneva. Victor had arranged everything. The fake identities, the encrypted burner phones, the discreet body armor under my Chanel suit. Even the pilot was ex-special forces. You're sure about this? Victor murmured as the engines roared to life. On my screen, 3 separate bids blinked. $200 million, Volkov. Full immunity, FBI. Something more personal, Lena. I snapped the laptop shut. Let's make them fight for it. The Swiss safe house smelled of old money and older secrets. Volkov's men arrived first. Twin brutes in tailored suits, their neck tattoos peeking above starched collars. The FBI agent came alone, her blonde ponytail and crisp pantsuit projecting government-issue confidence. Lena. She entered last, her baby bump prominent under a silk kimono, flanked by 2 men who looked like Interpol's most wanted. The bidding lasted 17 minutes. Volkov's enforcer slammed his fist on the table. Enough games. The price is $300 million. The FBI agent didn't blink. We'll drop all charges against Ms. Whitmore. Then Lena smiled. How about the one thing nobody else has? She slid a phone across the table. The screen showed a live feed of Daniel, not in his prison cell but strapped to a chair in a concrete room, his face bloody. The man who played you all. Victor hit play on Daniel's confession. It was Volkov's idea. The whole romance scam. Mark gave me Claire's profile. We were supposed to get the missile codes. The FBI agent's pen froze mid-note. Volkov's enforcer went pale. Lena? She just stroked her stomach and said, the baby's his, by the way. Chaos erupted. Volkov's men reached for weapons, just as Swiss police breached the doors. The FBI agent shouted into her comms. Lena's bodyguards hustled her toward an exit. And through it all, I stood perfectly still, watching the USB drive spin on the table like a top. Because the real payload wasn't on the drive at all. The safe house's panic room was soundproof. Victor handed me the real USB, the one with my father's original designs, not Volkov's stolen schematics. Daniel's confession is airing on every major network, he said. Volkov's men are scrambling. The FBI just issued a red notice for Mark Renshaw. I studied the tiny device. And Lena? Victor's smile was grim. Gone. Left you a present, though. He played the final clip. Daniel sobbing as Lena pressed a gun to his knee. Say hello to Clara for me. The gunshot echoed through the speakers. My father answered on the first ring. It's done, I said. For the first time in my life I heard fear in his voice. At what cost? Outside the window, Geneva's lights glittered like fallen stars. I hung up. The New York air tasted different when I returned, sharper, charged with the metallic tang of impending rain. The Whitmore Tower loomed ahead, its glass facade reflecting storm clouds like a dark omen. The lobby was empty. No assistants. No security. Just a single envelope on the reception desk with my name written in my father's precise script. Inside, a keycard and 2 words. Fix this. The executive floor looked like a war zone. Shattered picture frames. Empty desks where CFOs and VPs had once sat. The stock ticker on the wall flashed red. Whitmore Aerospace down 72%. My father's office door stood ajar. He sat silhouetted against the window, his once impeccable suit rumpled, a half-empty bottle of Macallan at his elbow. "You're late," he rasped. I dropped the real USB drive on his desk. Had to stop by the FBI first. His bloodshot eyes flickered to the drive. "And they'll take the deal. Full immunity in exchange for Volkov's head." A beat of silence. Good. He exhaled, shoulders sagging. That's good. I'd never heard him sound so tired. The safe behind his Degas painting held 2 things. 1. A black ledger documenting every dirty deal Whitmore Aerospace had ever made. 2. A blue folder labeled Project Phoenix. I flipped it open. Schematics. For a solar-powered desalination plant capable of providing clean water to millions. My father's voice was quiet. Built it from your trust fund. Every dirty dollar repurposed. The dates went back years. You knew this would happen. You met my gaze. I hoped you'd be the one to fix it. Lena found me on the rooftop garden, her infant son cradled against her chest. Figured you'd want to know, she said, handing me a birth announcement. Daniel Elias Carter Jr. Born 6 pounds 8 ounces. Father, deceased. I traced the date. 3 weeks early. Lena's smile was razor-thin. Turns out prison medical records are easy to falsify. A gust of wind carried the scent of rain and fresh-cut grass. What now? I asked. She adjusted the baby's blanket. Now you rebuild. And I disappear. But don't worry. She pressed a second envelope into my hand. You'll hear from us. Inside, a Swiss account number and a note. For his college fund. 1 year later. Whitmore Aerospace became Whitmore Renewables. The Black Ledger fueled investigations that toppled 3 regimes. And the New York Times headline read, "Heiress turns blood money into clean water for $2 million. My father retired. Lena sent postcards from places that didn't exist. And on the anniversary of Daniel's death, I received one last package. A prison security tape showing his final moments. Not the violence. Not the fear. Just him alone in his cell whispering Clara like a prayer. I burned it. The end.